Hello, Comm Organizing for Social Change students. I hope that you're doing well and that you either enjoyed the awards and recognition ceremony last night, as I did, or you had some time to read up for class and other classes. So I just wanted to provide a brief video overview, since we didn't get to meet face-to-face last night, of our topic for the week and readings, and then explain what I'd like for you to do by way of reflection in lieu of face-to-face discussion. So this week's topic is on corporations and how corporations are involved in social change, corporate organizing for social change. And at first glance, this might seem a little strange, because why would you talk about corporations in a class on organizing for social change? But as you probably picked up early on in the readings, oh yeah, corporations are very influential, in particular in the US economy as well as globally. And so I just want to give some broad strokes on the readings. If you start with the Massey chapter on corporations, this takes that macro perspective, if you remember what we talked about earlier in the semester. And they actually flash back on a couple of the theories that they mention in chapter 3 for thinking about social change in general. And the big headline that they start with in this chapter is corporations are really influential in our lives. And you would be hard pressed to look around yourself. I can look around my office to get through a day, or think about any context that you're in throughout the day where you couldn't see corporate influence in some way, shape, or form. And they give an example of that even if you're eating a vegetable from your own garden, right? Where did those seeds come from? They were probably purchased from a corporation. So you get the idea. We're surrounded, and corporations are very influential. The other takeaway here, sorry, I'm having some technical difficulties. The other takeaway here, again, is thinking about how this relates to social change. Massey, approaching it from that very macro level perspective and societal perspective, says we can think about this in two ways. We can think about it from the evolutionary perspective of thinking about the role that corporations play and change over time as society progresses, right? Many of our huge leaps, socially and otherwise, have been aided by products, by new technologies that allow, right, different things to happen. For example, the washing machine revolutionized, in particular for women, the types of work that they were able to do, right, and minimized the different types of work at home that they had to do. So it certainly is influential in that way. The other perspective that we can think about is the conflict perspective, where we see that in a capitalistic system, right, we have natural conflict of you're constantly, right, the capitalistic system, corporations are constantly trying to compete with each other for market share, for profitability, so on and so forth. And that is the nature of the system, and out of that you will have conflict. So the other thing that I want to mention here about corporations in general is that, just like we talked about last week with nonprofit organizations, when we talk about corporations, we're talking about a specific type of legal entity, right? So we're talking about a particular type of organization that's organized in a particular way, legally set up in a particular way, according to tax code and corporate law, and so on and so forth. And the big difference, right, from what we talked about last week with nonprofit organizations, is that the mission of a corporation, the purpose of a corporation, is to make profit for its shareholders, right? And that's whether it's private or public. Now, a lot of people contend that and say, well, wait a second. Corporations should be contributing to the public good. They're so influential. They ought to have more of a purpose than that. But if we pare it down just to that legal, right, purpose, and what are we talking about when we talk about a corporate type of organization? We're talking about an organization whose main purpose is to generate profit for the shareholders. So that opens up a whole line of interesting questioning for organizational communication scholars, for organizational sociologist, in thinking about, okay, what is the purpose of a corporation? Should it extend beyond this profit motive? And if so, how should it do that and under what circumstances? That leads us into our other readings for tonight, where you have some popular press, right, from magazines, some different examples of ways in which corporations extend beyond that for-profit motive and involve themselves directly in social change initiatives. One of the ways that's very popular to do this, especially in recent years, is through something called social entrepreneurship. So you've probably heard of the shoe company Toms, right? Buy one, give one. And so Toms is built, their business model is built around social entrepreneurship. We're going to, yes, make profit. We're a corporation, but as part of that mission, we're also going to give shoes away to people who need them or otherwise couldn't afford them, primarily in South America. So that is a new model of corporate organizing, newer, that has become particularly influential and popular in recent years. And if you took a look at the link that I placed on your module for tonight to the Skoll Foundation, you'll get a taste of how popular this is and all of the kinds of interesting things that people are doing in this social entrepreneurship corporate organizing model. Okay, now that's not to say, just like when we talked about nonprofit organizations, it's not to say that it's not without problems, right? And it's not to say that it's not without challenges or that it automatically leads to social change. There have been a lot of critiques of the Toms model, as well as other organizations that engage themselves in social entrepreneurship. And there's a lot of questions, right, about how sustainable a social entrepreneurship model is. So what you have are a couple of examples of organizations engaging in social entrepreneurship, which would mean external to the organization, right, or as part of the organizational mission. They have some type of social change initiative that is built in. So this is different than saying, okay, employees, on this day in May, everyone's going to go volunteer. Or, we're going to set up a fund to support these community partners, which is philanthropic, right? And a lot of big corporations do this. Maybe they sponsor the community gardens down the street. That's important, and it's not to minimize that work. But social entrepreneurship is when it's integral to the mission of the organization. The other example you have, and this comes from the New Yorker article on the company in India that's hiring women for would be a non-traditional job, traditionally a male gendered job. And so hiring women. So this is not necessarily dealing with social entrepreneurship, but what this gives you a case of is how organizations may try to enact, promote, adopt, and other examples even resist social change within their organization and their organizational practices, right? So if you think about, for example, you're working for a large corporation or you start your own small company, whichever, and you have a particular interest not only in making a profit in whatever it is you do and being successful in whatever it is you do, but you also want to further diversity and inclusion goals, right? So when you think about maybe who it is in your community that you might contract with, or you organize a company lunch, right? And you say, well, let me see, who are minority business owners in the community that we could contract with to cater this lunch, that we could contract with to provide our lawn care service, that we could contract with to draw up a new design for our office buildings. So it's that kind of social change oriented thinking within the organization that perhaps becomes policy and practice that this is dealing with. And it's a slightly different way to think about the overlap between corporations and social change. So tonight's readings, or this week's readings, really paint most of this in a positive light, right? It's thinking about, yes, corporations are very influential. Here are a few different ways that organizations are directly involving themselves in social change, whether that be under the banner of social entrepreneurship or within organizational practices. Perhaps we want to change the types of jobs that are available to women, so we're going to hire women for these positions specifically, because that's we're just going to make that part of our organizational practice. So not only are we delivering food, we're also employing women. You get my drift there. So we have that. What we're not tackling in this week's readings, and there's a healthy body of literature out there on this, are critiques of the pervasiveness of corporations in our everyday lives, and critiques of the way that corporations may hijack social change initiatives for their own benefit, or in ways that make you question the motives of social change. We're not tackling that this week. I want you to first enter into this discussion of corporations at this level of thinking about, okay, how are they involved in social change? What are the ways that corporations actually try to make this part of their mission or part of their organizational practice? And next week when we come back together, we'll loop back to this conversation and talk a little bit more about that critical perspective. Okay, so let me talk about what I want you to do in lieu of discussion. So I'd like for you to write 2 reflection responses. The first one is in response to a general prompt that I have posted that actually asks you to respond to a quote from the Massey reading. Responses should be anywhere from 200 to 300 words. This is your reflection and thinking about this topic based on your critical reading and understanding of the topic at hand. The second response, what I'd like for you to do is choose one question from among the questions that Kayla has provided us for this week and respond to it. So please choose your question, just list the question number and respond to it. Both of these responses are to be done in Canvas, and I'd like for them to be completed by the start of class next Tuesday. If you have any questions whatsoever, don't hesitate to contact me. I hope you have a great week. Thank you.